Welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York. I invite you now to join me in voice, body, and spirit as we sing our opening hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Welcome to online worship at First Unitarian. Here at First Unitarian, it is our mission that through spiritual connection in community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves, we open to wonder and transformation, and we serve together with love and humility. It's so good to be with all of you. I'm the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan, and I'm the lead minister here. Leading worship with me today is Reverend Margalie Belizaire, Tommy Snell, Arsen Jemkochian, Shannon Foose, a whole lot of people who helped us bring our reading forward today, and our worship associate, Megan Garvey. Tim Farnham brought a special offering of an offertory to us, and quite frankly, for those of you who have been around for a little while, you know that I don't believe it is Sunday morning worship without all of you. It takes a community to gather to make what we do real, and it is good to be with all of you today. I have only one invitation. There's a lot going on in Rochester here at church all week long. We've got Wednesday programming, but the thing that I'd particularly like you to do this week, and it's a small thing, this is not the soulful transformation work that, quite frankly, I'll ask you to do later. But this week, for those of you who are joining us on Zoom and video, not just phone, I'm going to ask you to update your Zoom between now and next week if you haven't done it in the past couple of weeks. Zoom made a couple of changes, and it'll make our worship a little bit more fun. There's some features we'd like to try out, but we can't do that until we know that we are all on the same page there. We want to make sure that when we are doing something, you're all able to participate. So please do that. And if you need help, we'll send out a tutorial in the newsletter on Thursday as well. But for now, it's been a week. It has been a year. Let's take a deep breath and settle into our worship. Please join me in saying our unison words as we light our chalice together. May the flames we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community.
As I sat in my aisle seat on the plane, I placed my headphones on and my Kindle book. I put that in the pocket of the seat in front of me and waited for the window passenger of my row to board the plane. Within 3 minutes, he walks up with a friendly smile. As he was settling into his window seat and I was putting on my headphones, mind you, I was doing this while simultaneously reaching for my Kindle. He chuckled and looked over at me. I paused, removed my headphones and said, "Huh?" He replied, "Isn't it always the case? I finally bring my headphones after much teasing from my friends so I can watch a movie. And there are no movie screens on this plane." So I chuckled back in agreement with him. Then I went back to my ritual of putting on my headphones. And this time I got only as far as reaching for my Kindle and starting to open it. And I heard him talking again in my direction. I ceremoniously closed the device, took off one of the earpieces and said, "What?" He asked if I traveled to Chicago much, and I said that I did. He went on to talk about how much he himself travels because of work and talked and talked. And he continued to talk with little encouragement from me because I insisted on lifting my head and going, and going back to my book. But as soon as the plane took off, I quickly took the opportunity to put my headphones back on and went back fully engaging my Kindle. Periodically, he would interrupt my concentration and share some bit of information about himself or would ask me a question. My responses, though friendly, were short, 1-2 word answers. And then I would go back to reading, or at least try to. About a quarter of the way into the flight, after many attempts to get a conversation going between us, he said, "So when you're ready to take a break from reading, maybe we can chat." I paused for a second and reflected on this invitation, then said, "I can take a break now." I took off my headphones, closed the Kindle, and put it in the seat between us that was empty. We went on to talk, laugh, joke with one another, and even came up with some private jokes on that 2.5 hour flight. And I think that's why we come to church. To take a pause from the mundane things that we feel must be done. To notice another human being and connect when the opportunity presents itself. I promise you, the mundane will wait. And I invite you to, whenever possible, make the choice to engage another.
Please join me now in singing One More Step. One more step, we will take one more step, till there is peace for us and everyone will take one more step. One more word, we will say one more word, till every word is heard by everyone. We'll say one more word. One more prayer, we will say one more prayer, till every prayer is shared by everyone. We'll say one more prayer. One more vote, we will count one more vote, for every vote counts in democracy. We'll count one more vote. One more song, we will sing one more song, till every song is sung by everyone. We'll sing one more song.
Our offering today couldn't be more timely. Our offering will be split between our church and the Susan B. Anthony House. The Susan B. Anthony House, located right here in Rochester, aims to preserve the home and legacy of one of our church's early members, Susan B. Anthony. Through various forms of educational programming, the Susan B. Anthony House helps us not only to remember Susan B.'s groundbreaking work for suffrage, but to reflect upon her approach and how it can shape us as makers of good trouble. Please give generously by Simple Church, Venmo, or check as you are able.
Life is short, but the days and nights are long. And time will heal all these wounds someday soon. I'll be rising, I'll be strong. But now I'm losing all my battles. Now I'm down, I'm dropping still, and this snow's blowing through like some ghost, and this blue I know too well. Broken hearts keep on beating just the same. So I guess I can too go through these moves, facing forward, walking straight. But now my glance keeps drifting downward. Now my feet can't find their way, and this cold's creeping in through these bones, whispering it's here to stay. I'll bide my time like there's any other way. It moves too slow, moves too fast, it's gone and past, it stopped entirely today. I know there's light on some horizon, but I can't see so far ahead. Patience and grace, blessed is love. I'm losing my faith in most of that stuff those wise men said. Most of that stuff those wise men said. Life is short, but the days and nights are long.
Sometimes you just need a drink of water, you know?
Amen.
It's been a stressful week for most of us. All of us, if I'm being really honest, even if you're not paying attention to the news or national politics, all of us are living into, what is it now? Month 8, 9? I'll admit I've lost track of the global pandemic. It's a stressful time for lots of us. And of course, there are moments of joy and celebration and community. And for me, one of those was we opened up our building for the first time since March. And lots of you came in to be in the space, but to also just across the room, see each other, 1 or 2 people at a time, sometimes as many as 3 or 4 scattered across our whole sanctuary. And we found that being physically in that place had an effect that was surprising on lots of us. We know the church is the people, not the building. but physically moving and being somewhere that felt powerful and safe and comfortable had an effect. The ritual of getting up on Sunday morning and getting dressed and traveling to church and sitting there and being in that space with people who either have known you for a long time or hopefully are getting to know you, people who support your spiritual journey, that physical act, even when the people weren't there, had an effect on many of us. That physical act is a part of our religious life, it turns out. We, as intellectual, belief-having and changing and loving and thinking spiritual people, are not separate from our bodies, are not separate from our actions. And I know lots of us know this, but I'll have to admit that as part of our shared religious life, it can sometimes be hard to claim and figure out how to live into that physical act of being in our bodies and being religious creatures, spiritual creatures who have bodies and not just hearts and minds and relationships. So we've invited worship associate Megan Garvey to help us out with this. Megan, you are someone who I think of who in our community talks a lot about embodied practice, that you have a sense of wanting to live your religious life physically. Mm-hmm. How did that first arise in your life? Where did physical practice and religious practice first come together for you?
Mm-hmm. So I think for me, being someone who grew up singing in my spaces of worship and having that for me be kind of the pinnacle of my worship experience, something that really engaged my whole body and helped me to feel more alive and helped me to feel more connected with all of the pieces of me rather than just maybe, the pieces of me that might be a little stressed about this or might be worried about this. It kind of helped me to feel like my life was more integrated and all one and joyful, even when maybe not everything was so joyful.
Yeah, that's powerful practice, and one that I know for lots of us it feels strange or embarrassing to be singing loudly at home, but it's something I've certainly been encouraging us all to do, and I will make a double effort to do for our next hymn. But
excellent.
Yeah. Well, so you just mentioned the stress piece of it, and many of us find ourselves now in a place where the thing that we've been stressed about this week has been relieved intellectually, right? To a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Now, folks may have lots of thoughts or opinions on that, but I think for many of us, the thing that has been stressing us out, which is the uncertainty of the national election, has gone away. And yet, I find myself, I came outside on this glorious day because I wanted to find a way to make that real for me, that intellectually I knew it, but in the absence of election parties or gatherings or any other way of knowing physically that something's changed,
yes,
I needed a way to connect. Do you have anything that could help me with that?
I think I do. Would you like to try an exercise with me?
I'd love to.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Well, if you would kind of get yourself seated in a way that you feel really like centered into the ground, really connected to the earth. For some people, that might look like just kind of making sure that they're, really connected to their chair. For other people, it might be helpful to really plant your feet on the floor, get your toes in the floor, then plant your heels down. Allow yourself to just do whatever you need to do to feel like you've got your center of gravity and you're steady. After I do that, I'm going to invite you to take a couple of nice belly breaths all the way from the bottom of your belly. Usually helps to try to focus on breathing out longer than you breathe in. But I will also say that sometimes when we've been anxious about something, focusing on our breath can sometimes make us more anxious. So if that's how you're feeling, that's totally okay and totally normal. Just allow yourself to kind of get a steady rhythm going with your breath, whatever that looks like for you. Next, I'm going to invite you to spread out your arms and stretch them like you're trying to make your shoulder blades touch. Only do this as far as it feels good and comfortable in your body, but just kind of get a good stretch in. And then let it go. We're going to do that again. So pick your arms up, try to make those shoulder blades touch. And then drop them. And then next, I'm going to kind of give myself a few moments to just shake out some tension. I'm really going to focus on my hands because I know I personally hold a lot of tension in my hands. So I'm going to shake out my hands and my arms. If you want to get them out here, kind of do a little bit of bird flapping, that's great too. And then I'm going to very gently wrap my arms across my chest, where I have one hand over here on the shoulder and cross with my other hand on the shoulder. If that is not comfortable or accessible for you, if it would be better to kind of wrap your arms lower down around you, that's great too. Once you've found your spot, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. If closing your eyes does not feel comfortable, you can just kind of leave them open, but focused on somewhere where your gaze can be softened and you're not really looking at anything. Then I'm going to start tapping very lightly, alternating one side to the other. And I'm going to do my best to kind of keep my attention focused on what that feels like to have one hand and then the other hand gently tapping. It's okay if my brain drifts away from that, but it can be really helpful to every once in a while kind of check in and see where your attention's going. I'm going to do this for as long as feels helpful. There are some times when I do this exercise and I do it for like 30 seconds. There are other times when I do this exercise for like 2 minutes. It just depends on what I need to be able to re-ground myself in my body in that moment and reconnect with myself. And when I'm done, I just allow my hands to gently drop. I open my eyes if they're closed. And I might take a few more deep breaths. And that's it.
Having honored our bodies and sit in silence for a little bit, I now invite you in a moment of prayer. Oh, what a time. What a week it's been. Spirit of celebration, thank you for showing up. Our celebratory moments have indeed been few as of late. So thank you for this. Thank you for this in our country where we have taken to the streets dancing and crying happy tears. We come together here this morning just as we are. Many are elated. Others of us are thankful and feeling relieved, even comforted. Let us also make space for those among us who feel troubled or lost, even anxious, wondering what's next. Let us practice patience and sit with the reality that this is indeed complex, for we are complex. Even right now, as we celebrate, we've had to put aside all the demands that require our attention. Let those demands sit a minute. We will be able to pick them up later. For now, in this moment where there is joy to celebrate for many of us, let us celebrate. And when it's time to do the work, may we be led by spirit and love as we move forward. Let us move forward with a clear mind, an open heart, with our body and spirit in accord. May we take the time to celebrate. May it be so.
I elect that bull elk in the Snake River. I elect that raven in the Canyonlands National Park.
I elect autumn moonlight on metal roofs. I elect the strand of barbed wire that fell from the post and is now woven into the tall brown grass.
I elect the tall brown grass.
I elect my neighbor's cat. The neighbors who are always cursing one another and screaming hateful things. Because every morning he sits with me on the fire escape and watches the sunrise without meowing.
I elect the feeling of boots laced tight. I elect potatoes cooked however.
I elect Vermont's faded, sagging, leaning, crooked in the best sense of the word barns. I elect rain improvising songs on a busted junkyard piano.
I elect the ghost of my grandfather Dean because the man never wanted to be anything but a farmer, or so says my grandmother Betty. I elect my grandmother Betty because at 95 she takes the long view.
I elect the hungry mouse who stole my snack, but did so honestly out in the open. I elect the thump, thump, thump of many wagging tails.
I elect a dream I once had of a monkey riding a flying goat. A dream in which I understood intuitively, instantly, that a monkey riding a flying goat foretold the healing of all wounds.
I elect the tears on my cheeks when I wake up.
I elect crushed mint.
I elect littered napkins, folded together by the wind and placed, as if by magic, at the base of a street corner trash can.
I elect a climb of precarious peak, which made me and will forever keep me humble as a pebble.
I elect that which cannot be written in, that which will guide us forward, ever forward, regardless of who lives in some White House. Most of us are not breathing without a sense of who lives and will live in some White House. And as those of us who read the poem earlier in this week remind me, there are plenty of White Houses. Some of you grew up in them, some of you live in them now, some of you hope one day to live in one when you finally get around to saving for that exterior paint job or moving into that house that you really like down the block. Most of us this week are breathing and sighing with relief. Most, but not all. Those among us and those beyond this gathered community carry some fretfulness, some complicated feelings, some regret, some fear, some anxiety. Some here among us still worry, finding that the tension that they've been carrying about the uncertainty of the election all week hasn't gone away because they worry now about a coup, worry about still the crumbling of our democratic institutions. After all, almost half the country voted for the other guy, but the other guy, without cause and despite lacking evidence, has repeatedly claimed that the election was and is invalid, flouting accountability to truth and a responsibility to lead with faithfulness to our institutions, but even more so, our collective well-being. The current president repeatedly claims that the election is invalid and eggs people on who feel that their backs are against a wall, who feel that their place in the world is threatened. After all, most of this nation's citizens are white, about 70%, and most white people who voted for our current president. So indeed, proportionally, more white women voted for our current president in this election than they did last time in 2016. Despite that, turnout among voters whose racial and ethnic identities are not white, but instead what might be considered the global majority, that was enough to shift the results of the election. The ways in which folks feel perhaps that their backs are against a wall and that their place in the world is shifting is a fear and an anxiety that the current, but soon to be not president has tapped into and repeatedly blown strength into with hot air and irresponsible words. So some worry about the likelihood of a coup, and that tension that many have been able to release over the past couple of days still lingers. Still, others worry about a general slide into complacency for the generally well-off, those who were moved to action during this current administration, but otherwise whose well-being isn't really affected by national politics. Others worry essentially about the complacency of me, someone who holds considerable power and privilege and legal protections, but who over the last few years routinely, as if in a ritual of reaffirmation, needed to turn to my spouse and say, whatever happens, if our legal bond is dissolved, our love will remain and our community will continue to hold and affirm us. To set down that talisman born of fear, but affirmed in the most recent years, is an invitation perhaps to say all will be well. And though I believe in an ultimate sense all will be well, it is too easy now to assume, to forget that none of us are free until all of us are free. Those of us who enjoy a significant amount of privilege and protection and power might too easily forget that in the results of this most recent national election, we have not found ourselves a savior and ultimate safety, the ultimate end to our collective struggle, but merely a new chapter in the creative process that is our fruitful co-creation with the divine, that ushering in of the beloved community, that ushering in of how things might be, the ways in which we know we're needled, knowing that not all is finished, not all is done. It's for some of us an intellectual reminder. I see many here in this congregation and here in this social circle that we share, carving out time to celebrate, but also verbal reminders of the challenges ahead. Others still have never let go of that tension, that the past day's news brought forward no relief, no celebration, only the fear and anxiety of these two possibilities that I just named, plus 1,000 other things that make life challenging. And yet, if the results of the national election are an invitation to us to more accurately understand the terrain of our future justice struggles, if our continued work for building the beloved community lays out before us, but shifts significantly, because it is no small thing to be able to set down fears. It is no small thing to affirm the basic humanity of immigrants, of queer and trans people, of women. It is no small thing to have shifted from a national rhetoric that has been popularized and acceptable in recent years. It is no small thing to shift to what the weeks and months and years ahead look like for us. We know the work continues. We know that the presidency that lies ahead and the elected officials who in some places turn towards a progressive dream and in other places rejected the dreams that I hold most deeply. We know that there are mountains beyond mountains, and that the map that lies ahead of us is a different one than it was last week. But if that is true, if the terrain of our future justice struggles has been selected by this national election, I invite those of us who hold some complexity about yesterday's celebration and are launching into our ongoing work to know too that we're invited to map the terrain of our wins, that which we celebrate, that which we lift up is so much bigger than a Biden presidency. Those who celebrate the results of our national election should take time to sing and dance and be with people who can hold their joy. And still others might look elsewhere. I start with our most intimate. I start with that which we have done here in this community. Here at First Unitarian, in the course of leading up to this election, I've seen us gather on an almost weekly basis here in this community with leaders launching new initiatives and inviting newcomers into this community who had not been active in this community 6 months ago. I see song and reclaiming of old hymns to be relevant to our times and our community. I saw old leaders, those who knew not only the ropes of the world, but how things are done here in this congregation, offering advice and encouragement to newcomers. I saw new ways of building community. Perhaps you saw this too. Some of you have found that you are called by new names here in this gathering. As we extend out, we know that here in Rochester, though many of you have been involved in local and national politics, many of you have also created new gatherings. I've seen those who've not been involved in organizing before take that energy that used to be reserved perhaps for backyard barbecues, not happening this summer, and funnel it instead to Zoom calls that I joined expecting 4 or 5 people and finding instead 40 or 50 who wanted to know how they could use their time and their energy and their weight to build a better world. I know that as we expand beyond our own little place, our own community of people who know us by name, we've seen on a national scale record voter turnout. We've seen places like Detroit and Georgia come out in massive numbers to exercise their democratic rights, but also to help shape the world that we will live in. We know that one election, the results announced yesterday, still embroiled in legal battles, but almost inevitable. We know that that is not a single linchpin in our shared history. Just as that result did not come without a past, did not come without organizing and teamwork, we know too that it does not end here, that our end game was never this election. Here in this spiritual community, we might find when we map out our celebrations and victories, whether it be a sigh of relief or knowing that many have voted for the first time or for the first time in a long time, or that media institutions had some floor when it came to truth, or that we met someone new in our voter efforts. We know that these small wins, which accumulated and aggregated, shift the boundaries of what is possible in our collective living. We know that this organizing and this legwork does not stop here. We all deserve rest. We deserve moments of joy and celebration. And I encourage you to take them. But for those who have been gathering on Wednesdays, for those who have either written letters, for those who have made phone calls, for those who have made deliveries, for those who were prepared to take a risk because everything mattered, all of that is still true. The political process, but more importantly, the process that says your voice matters and means indeed my voice and your voice, and that of a stranger who you barely could muster up the energy to call, but somehow managed to do, matters too. That energy and that organizing and that encouragement, that carries us through into next week, into the month ahead. We elect every day. We make choices every day. We elect the peaks that humbled us, the crushed herbs that lift up our spirits and invigorate our bodies. We elect the evidence of emotion on our face. We elect each other. We elect how we spend our time and our energy and where we place our ultimate faith. And we know that this is not the end. I invite all of you to continue to use that energy, to continue to use that spirit, to continue to know that your voice and your action does not happen in a vacuum, that we are most powerful when we act collectively, and that we are not done yet. Let us continue. One more step, one more roll of our chair, one more crawl forward, one more flap of the wings as we soar. We go together. May it be so. Amen.
Please join me now in singing I Know I Can. Troubles wait at every turn. I know I can go on when sorrow hears my soul and burdens make me strong. Though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. And though the journey's long, the destination is near. When hope awaits at every turn, I know we will go on.
Hope appears at every turn, and we keep rounding corners. Join me. Let's extinguish our chalice together. I will admit I don't always remember to do this at the end of our services, but it is such an important part of our ritual together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May we know, friends, that hope is not a state of being that is static. It is not a place where we have arrived and will continue to live. It is an active choice. It is a thing we work through and out of every day, striving toward, mapping out its new possibilities. Let us go out into the world, standing on the shoulders of giants, moving forward, celebrating the wins as they come, and reaching ever more, knowing that none of us are free until all of us are free. May it be so. Amen.